Have you ever received a message that ended up saving you from potential danger? So, this is something that happened to me a few years ago. So, I was in my backyard and it was the 4th of July, and I was standing on my deck. And, 4th of July, it's the middle of the summer, it's very hot. And I heard a voice in my head say, "There's a snake right there." And in my mind, I was thinking, it's hot. There's no way a snake is going to be just sitting out somewhere around here. Like, that's a kind of weird thought. Why would I think that? And so a few minutes later, all of a sudden, my dog jumps down. He goes over into the middle of the yard and he starts pointing at something. And sure enough, I go over there and there is a water moccasin in the middle of the yard. Now, if you're not familiar with water moccasins, they are venomous snakes. So it's definitely not something that you want in your yard. And, being the 4th of July, when you're out and, celebrating, walking around, it's certainly not something that you would expect to see in the middle of your yard. So I had received this message, and I remember thinking, how odd is it that I get this message warning me about this snake? But that is what happened. And so I think a lot of times we just need to learn to pay attention and we can receive these types of messages. I'm sure a lot of people before have just had this intuition or inner knowing that you needed to do something different. So maybe you decided, I'm going to take this exit. I don't know why, but I want to just take this exit now. That could have prevented you from potentially being in an accident, or maybe it, helped you avoid being stuck in traffic. There's all sorts of different scenarios. And I think that one of the things that you want to remember is we can build and learn and focus more and getting these intuitive messages and paying attention that, we can be more aware of if there's potential dangers, or it doesn't even have to be a danger, but we're just learning to tune in more to our intuition. So I think one of the main things that I think can help people better be in tune to where they're more aware of, potential dangers or being able to more be in tune with their intuition is to, start reducing your mental noise. And, that can be things like, reducing your time that you spend online or in social media, or just being exposed to so many different images and thoughts, because all of these different things, they end up kind of making our mind go into kind of like this mental overload to where we're not really able to focus so much on what kind of intuitive messages that we're hearing because it's kind of drowned out by all of these external things that we're being exposed to. Another thing that can help you tune in more is to be out in nature more, to just kind of disconnect. I think, when you're out in nature, you're naturally more focused on what's kind of going on around you. You're paying attention to the sounds, the smells, the sights. I think all of that is going to help build your own inner intuition. And I think the other thing is just, of course, meditating, learning to be still, and I really think that that's also going to help kind of quiet your mind so that you're more in tune with your own inner self, your own inner voice. But I wanted to share a couple other funny examples that are not necessarily danger, but when it's your intuition just kind of telling you something and you just kind of, blow it off. So, in one example, I had let my dog out in the backyard and I was in my office and I heard him barking. And I just thought, to myself, for some reason, I thought I should take my cell phone with me. Now, that didn't make sense to me. In my mind, I questioned myself, like, why would I take my cell phone? I'm just going to go out and look and see what my dog is barking at. So I ended up going outside into the backyard, and at the time I had a fence that had one little fence picket that was kind of falling down, and so my dog could see into the field behind me. And so when I went out there, I just happened to see my dog barking, and I look and see what he's barking at through the fence, and it's this huge deer that had, antlers, and it was very, very close to the back of the fence. So if I had my phone, I could have taken a picture of it. And, because it was just, yes, we see deer around here, but it's not that common. And I certainly don't see big ones with antlers and not that close. So that was just one kind of funny example where, my intuition was like, take your phone. And I was like, no, I don't need to take my phone. Another just recent example, again, it's not something big, but it's just one of those things where I'm just not, always picking up and listening to, my inner voice. So I thought I saw something out of my bedroom window, and I thought, no, that's nothing. I just, that's nothing. There's nothing out there. But I thought I saw some sort of movement. And I thought to myself, maybe I should put on my glasses and look and see what's out there. And then again, I'm like, no, there's nothing out there. And so I go out to the backyard and then I see something run across the backyard and it's a cat. So my intuition was picking up that there was something out there and I just, kind of ignored it. And, so I think it's one of those things where, these messages that we get are not always necessarily going to be something major. But I do think that, learning to, follow those little intuitive nudges and, be better at discerning, like, even if it's not something major, even if it's, you just being able to take a picture of something. Maybe, you decide to go outside and you see a rainbow or something. There's all these different types of things that this can manifest, but it's just a matter of tuning in and learning how to pay attention. So let me know in the comments if you've had any of those types of messages where you got a nudge to pay attention and you did. Thanks.